Hello, this is Phil Tomzak, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the August 7th issue of the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Let's start with news from the front page, and this first article has the headline, Toronto Catholic School Trustee Found Guilty of Misconduct by the Ontario College of Teachers. And this is written by Femi Dewodu, a staff reporter for the Star. A Toronto Catholic school trustee accused of linking LGBTQ protections to bestiality and other sexual fetishes has been found guilty of professional misconduct by Ontario's teaching regulator. The decision, quietly released on April 8th by the Ontario College of Teachers, brings to an end a long-running investigation into Michael Delgrande, a trustee with the Toronto Catholic District School Board for 12 years. Delgrande, a certified Ontario teacher since 2002, although he has never taught in a classroom, faced allegations stemming from two incidents in 2019. In the first, Delgrande was accused of belittling a student trustee who objected to the showing of an anti-abortion film in schools. According to the college's findings, Delgrande rolled his eyes, sighed, and told the student, "You've been brainwashed by the Liberals," an exchange during a board subcommittee meeting that left the student in tears. The panel found Delgrande's behavior inappropriate, but ruled it did not amount to professional misconduct. The finding of misconduct concerned a November 2019 board meeting, where Delgrande opposed a motion to add, quote, gender identity, gender expression, family status, and marital status, unquote, to the board's code of conduct as protected categories. Delgrande suggested that if those terms were included, the board should also consider protecting transvestite, bestiality, pedophilia, gerontophilia, and paraphilia, among others. Delgrande didn't respond to requests for comment. His lawyer did not respond to questions by the Star's deadline. Panel's ruling on Delgrande's gender identity comments. The panel ruled that the manner in which Delgrande expressed his opposition was disgraceful, dishonorable, and unprofessional, and constituted conduct unbecoming of a member. Delgrande defended his comments to the College of Teachers as a form of political hyperbole, arguing he was making a slippery slope point and did not intend harm. His lawyers also contested whether the college had jurisdiction to hear the complaints, since Delgrande has never worked as a classroom teacher and was acting as an elected official at the time. The panel dismissed these arguments, ruling that any certificate holder is subject to the college's standards. Delgrande further argued that the proceedings infringed on his rights to free expression under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. While the panel agreed his freedom of expression was limited, it found the limitation justified under Canadian law. Former TCDSB Chair Marcus DiDomenico, who pushed for board accountability and sanctions in the aftermath of the 2019 meeting, said he felt relieved that it's over and called the college's ruling a proper decision. Let's move on to our next front page feature from the world of real estate. It has the headline, A Luxury Yorkville Condo Just Sold at a $450,000 Loss as the Condo Crash Hits the High-End Market. And this is written by Manuela Vega, business reporter for The Star. A sleek one-bedroom condo with floor-to-ceiling windows, views of the CN Tower, and more than 1,000 square feet just sold at a significant discount. Located in the upscale Yorkville Private Estates building near Bloor Street West and Avenue Road, the unit changed hands for $1.465 million in July, according to real estate listing platform House Sigma, about $450,000 less than what the sellers paid in 2021. Such big losses have become increasingly common in Toronto, particularly for people who bought condos near the market peak in early 2022 and sold during the current downturn. The luxury market has been much more resilient against this trend, as wealthy buyers typically aren't under as much pressure to act fast and supply for extra-large homes is still limited, real estate experts say. But luxury condos haven't gone totally unscathed, they add, because buyers in this market still have plenty of options, especially for smaller units, and they are expecting a deal. Toronto's luxury market doesn't move in lockstep with the broader real estate market, explained Heaps Estrin real estate team broker Stephanie Newlands. Luxury buyers are generally less constrained or impacted by borrowing costs, she said. But they're still certainly influenced by consumer confidence, global uncertainty, and all the perceptions of value. Pied-à-terre properties see a lower demand. Chestnut Park sales representative Victoria Boscariol, the listing agent for the unit at 200 Cumberland Street, declined to comment on the specifics of the sale, but said the sellers' situations had changed and it was bad timing for them. The very large one-bedroom unit is perfect as a pied-à-terre, Boscariol said, referring to a smaller property that people buy as a second home for when they are in town. People buy this property and then they live down south in the winter, she said. But people aren't going to Florida right now, so that maybe cut off the demand a little bit. Christian Vermast, Executive Vice President of Sales at Sotheby's International Realty Canada, said return to office mandates likely also stifled demand. Many people who bought luxury one-bedroom condos were living either in King City or on the outskirts of Toronto and would just come to Toronto for board meetings or came to Toronto maybe a few days a month. But with the return to office, many of these buyers have pivoted to two-bedroom units, which have become more affordable over the last 18 months and offer the versatility of having a guest bedroom or home office, Vermast said. Next on the front page, more real estate news along that same vein, but this with the headline, Mark Carney is promising relief for Toronto renters. Here's why critics are concerned. And this is written by May Warren, housing reporter. When Prime Minister Mark Carney announced Wednesday that his government is providing $2.7 billion in funding to build more rental housing in Toronto, his emphasis was mainly on the benefits for residents. But concern is growing that roughly two-thirds of the money is going to loans for private developers. Bruno Dobruzin, a co-chair of the Toronto Tenant Union, calls this highly problematic. I think it's part of a continuing bailout that the developers are getting, in addition to the HST rebate on new homes and development charges relief, he said. Carney, speaking at a co-op housing site Wednesday with Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow, pledged $319 million for 9 projects to be delivered through the new Build Canada Homes federal agency, for a total of nearly 1,900 homes on city land. More than 700 will be affordable, meaning the rent will be less than 30% of the before-tax income for residents. The rest of the money is going to private developers, with $1.8 billion being made available via the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation's Apartment Construction Loan Program. That money has already been allocated for 9 projects across the city, from Scarborough to Weston, that will include more than 3,700 rental homes. While the 9 projects will include some affordable housing, many of the homes will be new market rental units, so Ontario's rent control regulations will not apply. We're going to be having these fancy new units that people cannot afford, said Dobruzin. But the CMHC says the money will boost rental housing. Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, which will administer the loan program, says that even though much of the money will go to private developers, it will still provide much-needed new rental housing for the city. The loan program provides fully repayable, low-interest loans to encourage the construction of more rental housing for Canadians in undersupplied housing markets, said CMHC spokesperson David Harris in an email. It plays a crucial role in filling Canada's housing supply shortage by providing home builders with the necessary low-cost financing to support faster construction of more rental supply across the country. Now let's move on to more news from the GTA. The headline is, "Her niece went missing from a Toronto hotel." Now, this woman says big cities are no place for wildfire evacuees. And this comes from Amarachi Amadike, staff reporter. Eve Wesley hadn't slept in days. Anxiety kept her awake over her niece's disappearance outside of a Toronto hotel that caused Cat Lake First Nation evacuees seeking refuge from the Northern Ontario fires. It wasn't until 2 days later that she was finally able to rest, she says, upon discovering the 22-year-old was found alive near the CN Tower after wandering around with nothing to eat. She started crying, Wesley said, recounting the long embrace shared with her niece after traveling to Toronto from Pikangikum to be with her. Even after the reunion late last month, Wesley said her niece was suffering panic attacks and could speak only to her about the ordeal. She didn't know her way around the city and just kept walking. Cat Lake First Nation and Wesley's home community of Pikangikum First Nation are dry reserves where the sale, possession, and consumption of alcohol are prohibited under community bylaws. To support these efforts to deter substance abuse, evacuees were screened for drugs and alcohol before entering the evacuation site. However, Wesley said alcohol consumption was involved in the incidents leading to her niece's disappearance. According to Wesley, her niece wandered away from the hotel after an altercation that followed a gathering where some people had been drinking. The people that come out here, that's when they get a chance to drink or do drugs. Her niece's disappearance unfolded against the backdrop of a summer of mass wildfire evacuations across northern Ontario. Since July, thousands of people have been forced from their homes as fires threatened remote communities, with many evacuees, the vast majority from First Nations, relocated to Toronto and other southern cities. While the evacuations have kept residents out of the blazes' path, First Nations leaders and evacuees say the sudden displacement has also exacerbated long-standing challenges, particularly around substance use, by placing people in environments where alcohol and drugs are more readily available than in many of their home communities, some of which are officially dry. In the past, some have failed to make it home after evacuating to Toronto. So Wesley wondered if her niece, a member of Pikangikum First Nation who was visiting family in Cat Lake when evacuations happened there, had fallen victim to something sinister in the big city. "She scared me," Wesley cried. A lot was going through my mind. I hope nobody had taken her." The hours leading up to her niece's discovery were riddled with ominous thoughts familiar to many evacuees within the Indigenous community, who worry that young people alone in unfamiliar cities can be vulnerable to exploitation or human trafficking. Indigenous people in Canada continue to be disproportionately represented among missing persons. "We couldn't sleep, wondering where she is," Wesley said, "because it's a big place and this was her first time being out here." Wesley said she believes relocating evacuees to large urban centers can expose some to substances that are unavailable or tightly controlled in their home communities. "I think it's best that they don't send our people to the big cities anymore." But for many, a first taste of life in Toronto. A new study by World Weather Attribution found that human-caused climate change made this year's major wildfires in Ontario and the Northwest Territories about twice as likely, with once rare conditions now expected every few years. With wildfires more frequent and accommodation harder to find, evacuations often lead to the introduction to big city life for residents of remote northern communities. In many cases, this is due to accommodation in nearby cities like Thunder Bay filling up rapidly. When the fires started spreading last month, Members of Armstrong and Namegusisagagun, also known as Collins First Nation, were able to find shelter in Thunder Bay because their communities were among the first to be displaced. Communities evacuated later, including Neskantaga First Nation, were forced further south. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. If you'd like to hear more from that story, we'd be happy to read it to you. You can contact us by phone at 716-821-5555. Let's move on to our next story from the world of provincial politics. Doli Begum looms large over the Scarborough Southwest by-election. And this is written by Robert Benzie, Queen's Park Bureau Chief. Doli Begum's departure from Queen's Park triggered the upcoming Scarborough Southwest by-election, but she could still help swing it even though she's now serving in Ottawa. Begum, the popular former NDP MPP who made national headlines when she defected to Prime Minister Mark Carney's Liberals, winning a landslide in an April federal by-election, is looming large in the September 3rd provincial vote. "I'm a Liberal member. I'm a strong Liberal member, so I'll be looking forward to what happens," the rookie Grit MP told the Star this week when asked which party she would help in the by-election. "I represented this community at the provincial level, and I know the work required. It's very important work, and of course I look forward to working with the person that the people of this community select." As a New Democrat, Begum won Scarborough Southwest 3 times provincially, in 2018, 2022, and last year, and the NDP believes tenant advocate Fatima Shaban can hold the riding for the official opposition party. Shaban was also the federal New Democratic candidate in April, when she received 5.9% of the popular vote to Begum's stunning 69.6% for the Liberals. Against the backdrop of that success, NDP leader Merritt Stiles has expressed hope her former caucus colleague sticks to her federal lane in the provincial contest. But the Ontario Liberals are banking on Begum helping them win a seat they held for 15 years before she took it for the NDP in 2018. They want her campaigning for their candidate Ashanul Hafiz, owner of 30 Domino's pizza outlets, who canvassed for the federal Liberals in the spring by-election. Like Begum and progressive conservative candidate Dr. Noor Tarun, a family physician, Hafiz is a prominent member of the riding's Bangladeshi Canadian community, while Shaban is the daughter of a Slovakian mother and Egyptian father. The pizza magnate defeated one-time provincial Liberal leadership hopeful Nate Erskine-Smith, then the MP for neighboring Beaches East York, in a bitter May nomination race in Scarborough Southwest. That forced Erskine-Smith, who challenged the results and has since resigned from federal politics, to abandon his bid to lead the Ontario Liberals. Premier Doug Ford, meanwhile, has said that without Begum on the ballot, she won 42.9% of the popular vote in the 2025 election, when her fellow New Democratic candidates only took 18.6% province-wide. Her Tories may be able to eke out a victory in a riding they last won in 1999. "She's very good. I've always gotten along with Doli. She's a very good person," Ford said earlier this year. But the Premier has also emphasized his 3-term PC government has delivered for Scarborough with improved transit like the Eglinton Crosstown LRT, the forthcoming subway, and hospital construction. Let's move on now to an opinion piece about Premier Doug Ford, and it has the headline, "Doug Ford wants Ontario voters to look anywhere but here." And this comes from contributor Jim Coyle, who is a former Toronto Star reporter and feature writer. Ontario's leading practitioner of misdirection and distraction, that would be Premier Doug Ford, was trying desperately this week to turn the public eye from his tarnished brand. The Premier's Treasury Board Secretariat announced the launch of a review of key agencies to ensure, and here's the rub, efficiency, good governance, and value for taxpayers. Starting this summer, the province will review Metrolinx, the Workplace Safety and Insurance Board, Supply Ontario, the Liquor Control Board of Ontario, Ontario Cannabis Retail Corporation, Legal Aid Ontario, Agricorp, and the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario. Apparently without irony, Treasury Board President Peter Bethlenfalvy declared the review would improve operations while respecting taxpayer money. In principle, this is splendid news for Ontarians. In practice, it's like assigning a break-and-enter artist to deliver a Sunday sermon on the wickedness of coveting thy neighbor's goods. Given Ford's own performance in recent months and that of several of his caucus members in spending public money on personal comforts and indulgence, it's a little audacious to cock a skeptical eyebrow at other agencies of government. But polls released this week obviously did not escape the Premier's notice. Something is stirring that suggests discontent among his public. Ford's Progressive Conservatives dropped slightly in public support on the basis of what analysts said was distaste for an expense scandal that so far has cost one cabinet member his job. The demoted Stan Cho and several other GTA members of the Ford government were ordered by the Premier to repay more than $120,000 in downtown hotel expenses they had claimed despite living within easy range of the legislature. No MPPs from other parties made such claims. David Coletto, president of Abacus Data, said the hotel expense scandal kind of broke through, which these stories tend to do. A majority of Ontarians had seen, read, or heard about the controversy that led to Cho's resignation from cabinet on July 17th, Coletto said, and this in the sleepy weeks of midsummer. Ontario's often wrong but never to blame Premier said he had to be pried off the ceiling when he heard about the spending by Cho et al., which is curious given the Premier has set a rather poor example in the field of respect for taxpayers' money, having only months ago bought a $28.9 million executive jet in order to make his travels less onerous. True, Ford promptly unloaded the jet after the Star made it public, but not before revealing his own insensitivity to the economic struggles Ontarians are facing in the age of weaponized American tariffs. As with the government's spinorama on the plane, the fallout from the Heartbreak Hotel scandal hit the Premier personally, Coletto said. In that sound fiscal stewardship and a promise to watch every penny is the brand on which he trades, and on which he and his team seem to be regularly falling short. So it was almost inevitable that there would be a display of flinty-eyed tight-fistedness to convince Ontarians that Ford wasn't as injudicious, self-indulgent, and lax on governance as recent months so thoroughly suggest he is. The Premier's party still enjoys a comfortable lead in the polls. Ford had said that he intends to extend his string of 3 consecutive majorities in his government's next consultation with the electorate. But he has had an unpleasant run that suggests hairline fractures in his popularity and the likelihood that voters may finally be ready to appraise him with more critical eyes. For now, he wants those eyes looking elsewhere. Over there, at Metrolinx, at the LCBO, at the Cannabis Corporation, and the Alcohol and Gaming Commission. Anywhere other than at his government's own shoddy record of waste, misspending, and self-indulgence. Let's move on to another column from the world of sports, tennis. And the headline is, Jessica Pegula loves playing in her own backyard at the National Bank Open. And this comes from star columnist Rosie DiMano. Jessica Pegula is a billionaire heiress. Having written that, I feel like there should be an asterisk attached. On her own dime, so to speak, she's earned upward of $25.5 million U.S. as a tennis player, which is pocket change for her parents in a family worth an estimated $9 billion. Dad, Terry Pegula, founded his fortune in oil and gas before pivoting to sports, buying the Buffalo Sabres for $189 million in 2011 and outbidding Donald Trump to purchase the Buffalo Bills for $1.4 billion in 2014. He also owns the Buffalo Bandits of the National Lacrosse League. So it might seem as if, given her sports heritage, Jessica, born and largely raised in Buffalo, was practically preordained to be an athlete herself. But the Pegulas, Terry and second wife Kim, Jessica's mom, weren't yet a sports clan dynasty when their daughter first began to blossom as a tennis tween prodigy. Certainly wealthy enough already, though, to pull up stakes and move to South Carolina via Pennsylvania when Jessica was 13, so she could benefit from high-level coaching. That might qualify as a domestic sacrifice in a blended family of 5 children. It was Jessica, however, who more or less enticed her father into the sports realm, not the other way around. She could have gone the equestrienne route, say, as is the trendy fashion for the upper classes and the nouveau riche. Instead, she followed in the footsteps of an older sister who was playing Division I college tennis. Her parents now do own, in fact, a 12-acre equestrian estate, Camelot Farms, in Boca Raton, Florida. Jessica lives close by with her husband, but far more modestly. A lot of the stuff, as far as my family, didn't really happen until I was 17 or 18, Pegula told the Star following her rain-racked third-round straight-set victory over Kamila Rakimova of Uzbekistan on Thursday afternoon at the National Bank Open. My parents have always felt that I was the one that kind of led them into sports because I was the athlete in the family. My parents always joke that having these teams, I forget how many players are on a team, but it's like 50 of me, and they said that's way harder to manage than just me. I kind of prepped and maybe led them into that space more than the opposite. It's a space she has filled admirably in recent years with consistently good play, although it took a good while to all come together with Sheen. Now 32 years old, Pegula is world number 3, a career-high ranking. Wednesday's dispatch of Rakimova, 2 rain delays, Pegula up 6-4 and 4-0 at 40-15, the players retreating to the locker room and mostly avoiding eye contact before being recalled, finishing off the Uzbek with a bagel break, was the Americans' 40th match win of 2026. I've had a lot of experience the past week with these rain delays, noted Pegula, who pulled into Toronto after losing the final in Washington, D.C. on Monday to Filipino phenom Alexandra Yala. These warm-ups today was definitely not easy. Just tried to use my experience in those situations the best I could. She's twice won the NBO championship, including the last time the women's tournament was held in Toronto. With a grandmother born in Montreal, raised so close to the border, Pegula practically has honorary Canadian citizenship. She loves playing in this country. Something about the atmosphere and just feeling like I'm kind of playing in my own backyard has always helped me do well here. Yet, despite her reliable consistency and power game, Pegula has racked up the most aces on the women's tour this season. She might be in danger of becoming the new Madison Keys. It took 16 years after turning professional for Pegula's compatriot to finally break through into a Grand Slam winner's circle at the 2025 Australian Open. On Thursday, Keys was seen off handily 6-3, 6-1 by Ukraine's Marta Kostyuk. Pegula reached the final of the U.S. Open in 2024, a semifinal early this year in the Australian Open, quarterfinals at Wimbledon a month ago and in 23, and quarterfinal at Roland Garros in 22. It's definitely an outlying achievement that I still haven't gotten yet, but at the same time, I don't hold too much to it. If I never win a slam, I'm still going to have a great life. It's not something that's driving me insane. She's changed her perspective on that. I was starting to feel that pressure, all the amazing results and achievements that I've had. Until someone pointed out that a slam trophy amounts to a fortnight wonder, and then, boom, you're back on the tour grind. They thought it's harder what I've been able to do as far as being so consistent than being hot and winning a Grand Slam for 2 weeks. Well, that's one way to look at it without going mad. That's still obviously a big goal that I want to achieve, but I wouldn't say I'm living and dying on that. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Okay, let's move on to the world of entertainment, rock music, and Rush. And this one has the headline, Rush's 4 shows at Scotiabank Arena to be filmed for a possible concert movie. Geddy Lee's brother Alan Weinrib will oversee the footage, marking his directorial debut after years of producing band projects such as the concert film Rush R40 Live. And this is written by David Friend, our culture reporter at the Star. Rush is coming home this weekend, and they're planning to make a big production out of it. The Toronto progressive rock legends say that all 4 of their sold-out Scotiabank Arena shows, beginning Friday, will be filmed in their entirety to both capture a milestone in the band's history and provide material for a likely concert film. Geddy Lee told the Star that Toronto was a natural choice for filming since both he and Alex Lifeson grew up here. The demand for such a film has been off the charts, not only as a keepsake of their experience, but for those many fans that have not been able to see it live, he wrote in an email. We know there are fans traveling here from all across the globe, and that will make it a special week. A representative for the band says plans for how the concert footage will be used are still being explored. Lee said he was confident Rush fans would make the Toronto shows something to remember, being louder and prouder than ever before over Friday, Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday nights. Lee's brother Alan Weinrib, a longtime Rush collaborator, will oversee the concert footage, marking his directorial debut after years producing the band's projects, including the concert film Rush R40 Live. Bassist Lee, 73, and guitarist Lifeson, 72, were raised in the Willowdale neighborhood of North York and went to school together before forming the band, which defined an era of rock music with classics that include Tom Sawyer, The Spirit of Radio, and Closer to the Heart. This is the first time they've toured under the Rush name since 2015. Drummer Neil Peart died of brain cancer in 2020. German drummer Annika Niles joined the lineup and began months of extensive rehearsals last year to prepare for this tour. Since her debut, she's won rave reviews from critics and fans for nailing Peart's intricate skills behind the kit while making the performance her own. The North American leg of the Rush tour launched on June 7th in Inglewood, California, and will wrap with 2 nights in Vancouver on December 15th and 17th. The band heads to South America and Europe early next year. Other Rush events will be happening around Toronto this week. The 4th annual Rush Day takes place at the Henderson Brewery at 128A Sterling Road on Saturday from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. with an official merchandise pop-up shop, a limited edition beer, a pinball tournament, and Rush karaoke. Later that afternoon, Niles will appear at music instrument retailer Long & McQuaid at 925 Bloor Street West for an in-store signing event at 4 p.m. RushCon, the long-running fan convention, begins this weekend with a pre-event social at the Loose Moose, 146 Front Street West, on Friday, before moving to the El Macambo on Saturday for a full day of guest speakers, a charity auction, and other programming, followed by a sunset boat cruise for 3-day pass holders. For Rush fans looking to explore the region on their own, the province's tourism agency Destination Ontario has launched a webpage devoted to hotspots around the area connected to the band. And now sticking to the entertainment world, but a bit of hockey news. It has the headline, Kelly Hrudey, a free agent after Sportsnet declines to renew his contract. This is not a retirement. Longtime NHL goalie turned broadcaster posted a farewell video on X thanking colleagues and crew after 28 years on TV. And this is written by Kevin McGran, sports reporter. Kelly Hrudey is moving on to Act 3. The longtime NHL goalie and hockey broadcaster posted a video on X stating that Sportsnet declined to renew his contract over the summer, spelling an end to 28 years on television. He took the high road. Big changes in my life, he said. This is not a retirement. Hrudey was a fixture on the Hockey Night in Canada studio panel, alongside Ron McLean, David Amber, Elliot Friedman, Kevin Bieksa, Jennifer Botterill, and Luke Gazdic, and also worked Calgary Flames regional games. He raised a glass of red wine after he thanked his on-air colleagues and behind-the-scenes crew members. You weren't a co-worker to me, you were a friend, he said. I think of all the people, the producers, the directors, everybody behind the scenes that I worked with. Hair, clothing, makeup. You had an impossible job. If you were in a control room, production truck somewhere, I thank all of you for your hard work behind the scenes. And everybody that I was on air with. Man, you guys are the best. I love you so much. I love your support. It was so great, and I look back fondly at all of our memories that we created. Thanks for everything. The post had almost 2 million views, with heavy hitters in the hockey community wishing him well. Appreciate your friendship and guidance, wrote Hall of Famer Chris Pronger, another player who has crossed over to the media. Always pure class, said TSN broadcaster James Duthie. Hard to think of anyone in our business who has had a better Act 1 or 2, said Sportsnet play-by-play announcer Chris Cuthbert. Hrudey, now 65, spent 16 seasons in the NHL with the New York Islanders, Los Angeles Kings, and San Jose Sharks. He was in net for the Kings when they played the Doug Gilmour-led Maple Leafs in 1993 in the Western Conference Final to advance to the Stanley Cup, losing ultimately to the Montreal Canadiens. He joined the broadcast booth after retiring from hockey in 1998. Hrudey has also been an advocate for mental health, openly discussing his personal battles with anxiety and panic attacks dating back to his playing career and continuing through his broadcasting career. His departure from Sportsnet's NHL coverage is the latest in a line of changes coming to how fans consume hockey. Joe Bowen called it a career after 44 seasons behind the mic, both on radio and TV, as the voice of the Maple Leafs. The team has yet to announce a replacement or divulge its plans. Some fear the Leafs will simply simulcast the television broadcast on radio, with games divided by the Sportsnet The Fan 590 and TSN 1050. That could become problematic when games on radio do not line up with their TV counterpart. In other words, if TSN is carrying the game, Gord Miller's voice would be heard on a Sportsnet radio station. Ditto Sportsnet's Cuthbert being heard on TSN 1050. Meanwhile, CBC is repatriating up to a dozen staffers, those who worked on Hockey Night in Canada, from Sportsnet after failing to come to a sub-licensing agreement with the NHL national rights holder, Rogers Sportsnet, that would have allowed the public broadcaster to air games on Saturday night. CBC has retained the HNIC brand and is expected to put some sort of hockey show in primetime under its banner. Earlier this summer, Prime Video and Rogers Communications announced a 12-year agreement for Prime Video in Canada to exclusively broadcast Wednesday night regular season national NHL games in English and French, beginning this season. Prime Video also acquires exclusive rights to select Stanley Cup playoff series in Canada. Time for a bit from the relationship section. Here's some advice coming from Lisi. And today's headline is Ask Lisi, My neighbor blamed my daughter for her daughter's eating disorder. Then she made a demand we couldn't agree to. Who's in the wrong? And this is by Lisi Tesher, advice columnist. And here's the reader question. Recently, we relocated across the country for my husband's work. We built a house close to friends of ours whom we had known when they lived near us, and we were all very close. Things were great for the first few months, but once school started, things changed. Their daughter was struggling with mental health issues, and she wasn't taking well to my daughter being in her class and integrating in her friend group. My daughter was blamed for the return of an eating disorder due to the stress her presence at school was causing. She wasn't nice to my daughter. For example, she got my daughter in a holiday gift exchange and didn't get her a gift. So, on exchange day, my daughter didn't receive anything. She then gaslit my daughter. My friend made us have a family meeting and told us it was unacceptable to make her daughter feel bad. This cycle continued for months. That spring, my eldest went through a relationship breakup and was quite upset. People we'd only known for a few months were offering support, bringing her ice cream, checking in on her. My friend didn't even text me once. I realized just how little she cared about me and my family. I started pulling away. I stopped texting. 2 months went by before she texted saying she missed how close we were. As fall rolled in, I kept the peace, but we didn't hang out. I invited her to our Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner out of obligation, but the friendship element was gone. Fast forward, my daughter recently signed up for auditions at various dance studios. My ex-friend texted saying she didn't want my daughter auditioning where her daughter dances, that her daughter was finally happy and healthy, and she didn't want my daughter to disrupt her peace. I was shocked because although she and I weren't close anymore, our girls' friendship was doing okay. I didn't respond because I found it so offside to tell someone not to try out for a team. After talking it over with a few people, we decided to audition regardless. The thought being, her daughter needs to learn to work through difficult situations. And if my daughter's presence at her dance studio is stressful, how is it she can go to school and sit with her all day without issue? At the audition, this girl didn't speak to my daughter. So my daughter messaged her afterward. The next morning, we woke up to a reply telling her their friendship was over and the family had removed us from all forms of social media. I cannot wrap my head around this reaction. I keep going back and forth on how I could have handled the situation better. I'm happy feeling free of their control, but also sad at the end of a friendship. I feel so alone, far from all my friends and family. Was I wrong to go ahead with the audition? Should I have given in to her telling me to pull my daughter out of the audition? Signed, Dance Mom. And here's Lisi's answer. These people are self-absorbed bullies. Your daughter should audition wherever she wants. No one can tell you where you can and can't audition. This woman is not a good friend. Your other friends were right. You've learned and hopefully moved on. Your daughter needs to do the same with her daughter. Be happy they removed you from social media. They look ridiculous and self-righteous. Be grateful you are no longer in the orb of their toxic behavior. Make new friends and enjoy your life. You moved for your husband. You may need to move back for your family. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Okay, let's move on to travel news now. And this is a special to the Star from Wing Say Tang. It has the headline, Cruising Isn't Just for Grandmas Anymore. This new luxury ship skews younger and offers private balconies for everyone. If you'd rather check into a boutique hotel, this cruise ship has been designed for you. On a sultry, sun-baked day in late July, I sipped Dom Perignon while enjoying the sweetest beefsteak tomato of my life. I glanced to my left to see the luminous French Riviera, my cliffside view unimpeded from the romantic medieval village of Aze. where slender cobblestone alleys have led me to the terrace of La Chèvre d'Or, a five-star hotel frequented by the rich and famous. Just 24 hours earlier, and then 24 hours later, I'm in the Tuscan countryside, sampling local charcuterie, cheeses, and a sparkling Brut Rosé named Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic. I'm at the open-air pizzeria of Il Pelagio, the 16th century villa and vineyard estate owned by Sting and Trudy Styler. It doesn't normally open for lunch, but an exception has been made just for us. Forgive me, for I know each of these sentences is more obnoxious than the last. Between these shore excursions and dream destinations, I travel with no effort, retiring to the plush comforts of my suite at sea and opening my eyes someplace new each morning. I'm one of the first ever guests on Explora 3, joining the ship's prelude sailing on the Mediterranean before its official maiden voyage. The VIP on board is Jannik Sinner, the world's top tennis player and Explora's global brand ambassador, fresh off her Wimbledon win. His coaches have helped shape the ship's ocean wellness program from workouts to recovery. When I have a little bit of time, I like to go somewhere where it's very calm, says Sinner, holding court with our little media contingent one afternoon. Back in the days when I was younger, I never would have thought about the sea. But it's somewhere you are kind of untouchable, because you get out of land and you can just switch off the phone, and then that's it. And these days are priceless. Although I'm not a newbie on the water, I've never identified as a cruiser. But maybe I just haven't been on a ship this persuasive. Among the various cults of travel personalities, there are hotel people and then there are cruisers, and never the twain shall agree. The latter group has to contend with all sorts of stereotypes. The ships are either boozy party boats or full of grandmas. The food is a buffet of blandness. The vessels are monstrously sized. The cabins are claustrophobic. Even among avid travelers, and especially among the uninitiated, cruising has long had a reputation as a value vacation with compromises. But now there's a new wave of luxury challengers, all vying to toss those old assumptions overboard. Several are from the hotel world. Ritz-Carlton made its inaugural voyage in 2022 and has a fleet of 3 super yachts today. The Four Seasons debut vessel has been floating around since March. Aman, whose resorts attract a celebrity fan base, will set sail in 2027. Explora Journeys isn't from a boogie hotel brand. It's part of the Geneva-based, family-owned MSC Group, the world's largest shipping company. Still, it's wooing hotel people all the same. Maybe the best suite comes with a new view every day, purrs its sleek ad campaign, which says nothing about where the cruise line goes. Maybe the best rooftop doesn't need a city. Maybe the best hotel isn't a hotel. Are we debunking preconceptions? Absolutely. Do we enjoy doing it? Absolutely, declares Anna Nash, president of Explora Journeys, when we chat on the ship. After a decade-long stint at Aman, she knows hotel people well. I can't help but notice that my fellow guests skew younger than expected, with many seemingly in their 30s to 50s, if I had to guess. I would challenge anyone who says cruising's not for me to come on board and try it, Nash continues. We wanted to really face that stigma head on. She also eschews the word luxury, which can translate as too much opulence, cold and unwelcoming. The ship's design still has grandeur. We're greeted by a soaring lobby bar with a giant bespoke Murano glass chandelier and marble from the floor to the sculptural staircase. But, Nash adds, you should walk in and feel like you belong. It takes me 0 time to feel at home. My spacious penthouse is one of 461 suites. Even the smallest suite is roomy at 377 square feet. Every single one comes with a private balcony, a perfect spot for a meditative plate of pasta at sunset. Room service is but a call away at any hour. There are no dreaded windowless inside cabins here. I have ample room to sprawl on an oversized suede couch and to fully unpack in the walk-in closet. As a mid-sized ship, Explorer 3 is big enough to offer abundant diversions, including a dozen bars and lounges. If the Technogym-equipped gym is bustling like usual, escape to the spa with its salt cave, Finnish sauna, and hydrotherapy pool, one of 5 heated pools on board. Or get some al fresco exercise on the paddle court or 250-meter running track. If there's no time for an excursion to Sting's Tuscan estate, just head to the Cellar Wine Bar, which stocks bottles from Il Palagio among its nearly 350 labels. There are so many restaurants you never have to repeat a meal, though I'd happily dine again on the miso black cod and sushi at Sakura, or the Piedmont hazelnut semifreddo with salted caramel at Med Yacht Club. Perhaps the one thing that seems like it belongs on a different, gaudier sort of ship is the casino. The ship is also small enough to somehow feel like a members club, even with 900 guests, not a floating city. Everyone I meet on staff is faultlessly polite and equipped with spy-level observation skills. In the Emporium Marketplace, a fancy food hall, I can't sit down without a host emerging within seconds to offer water or champagne. More than once, I approach a seat only to find that someone has magically materialized behind me, pulling out my chair before I can reach for it. Each day's itinerary is packed from dawn to dark with guest activities and entertainment, guided workouts, live music, lounge shows, but I confess I do little of them. As we near our final port, close to Rome, I find myself wishing for more time, not for excursions to a medieval village or music icon's winery, but for what every cruiser wants, the pleasures of doing next to nothing at sea. And let's stick with some more entertainment news from the stage. And this is written by Glenn Sumi, and it has a headline, Behind the Scenes of the Great Gatsby at Mirvish, with its gorgeous gowns, elegant suits, and oodles of beads. When you see the splashy new musical, The Great Gatsby, which opened this week at the CAA Ed Mirvish Theater, don't be surprised if the characters' costumes receive entrance applause. After all, Linda Cho, the Toronto-based costume designer, won a Tony Award for her ornate, elaborate creations evoking Roaring Twenties America. She designed nearly 300 costumes, everything from gorgeous beaded dresses and elegantly tailored suits to feathered headpieces, all of which help bring F. Scott Fitzgerald's 1925 classic novel about the mysterious and wealthy Jay Gatsby, his lost love, Daisy Buchanan, and Daisy's philandering husband, Tom, to life on stage. But since this is a musical, the costumes need to be sturdy enough for performers to sing and dance in them 8 shows a week, and they need to be pleasing to the 21st century eye. In the 1920s, many dresses fell straight from the chest and skimmed over the hips with no waist, Cho told the Star from her home in Manhattan. But to the more modern eye, we find things like a snatched waist and lifted bust more attractive. So my team and I created what we call the Cheater 20s. There's a number in the show called New Money, in which there's lots of sparkle and jewel tones. There weren't a lot of sequins in the actual 1920s. There were some, but not to the extent that I use here. For the actors, the costumes help them get into character. I feel so powerful in my Gatsby clothes, said Leanne Robinson, who plays Jordan Baker, a professional golfer who becomes a sort of +1 for the show's everyman narrator, Nick Carraway. Jordan is the only female you'll see in the show wearing pants, but what's surprising is that in the 1920s, even as a golfer, she wouldn't have been wearing them. She would have been wearing long skirts, said Robinson in a backstage interview earlier this week. Linda has designed these high-waisted, flared pants that give Jordan a domineering, masculine feel, but the tops are soft and feminine. They make you feel sexy and strong head to toe. You stand up tall and own the looks. For a touring show with so many costumes and costume changes, Daisy displays 10 outfits during the performance, as well as vigorous dancing. There are bound to be wardrobe snafus. During one 35-second costume transition in which Jay had to change out of a full tuxedo and into a military outfit, the show's wardrobe supervisor, Michael Turner, discovered a zipper had broken on one of the characters' custom-built knee-high boots. So right before a dance break, we used some dark-colored gaffer tape to wrap around the boot, he said in a separate interview. It wasn't the most pleasing aesthetic choice, but it could have been dangerous to the actors if the boot was undone, and we care about the artist's safety above all. If you'd like to hear the rest of this article, we would be happy to read it to you on the new performance of The Great Gatsby. You can call the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service and we would be happy to read it to you. Our number is 716-821-5555. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the August 7th issue of the Toronto Star. Your reader has been Phil Tomczak. Thank you for listening.